Hello, everybody. I have with me today Meredith Angwin. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that right. She's written an absolutely brilliant book about the electrical grid called Shorting the Grid, The Hidden Fragility of Our Electric Grid. Read it, read it, read it. It's one of the three that I think talk about that better than almost anybody else. And then she also, of course, has a Substack, as all of us do. So meredithangwin.substack.com. And the last name is Angwin. So my biggest question for you is, what has changed since you wrote your book? In other words, if you were going to rewrite the book for today, what, if anything, would you change in it?
Well, one of the things is that I was very sort of apologetic about predicting that the grid was fragile and there'd be rolling blackouts and stuff. And I think people are really more aware of how fragile the grid is now. And I would be more assertive and not be afraid of being accused of being alarmist. After the Uri storm in Texas, nobody was accusing people of being alarmist about the grid.
And so you don't see anything anybody's done to try and unfragile it, for lack of a better word.
Well, yes, there is one thing that people are doing. They're beginning to extend the life of nuclear plants, talk about building new nuclear plants,
Mhm.
and even extend the life of some fossil plants instead of just shutting them down willy-nilly, saying, "Don't worry, someday there'll be a whole bunch of renewables to take the place of this."
Right. Yeah, I read a thing somewhere that it said if you're against nuclear and you're against carbon, then you're essentially pro rolling blackouts.
Yes, I think that's pretty much the straight description of the situation.
All right, so if you had a magic wand or you got the little thing with the genie coming out of the pot, what would you have them change on the grid?
Well, I would extend the lifetime of all nuclear plants and uh, probably a lot of other plants, even though like a coal plant, even though it's got a lot of facts against it, you have to also understand that it has a lot of things for it. It's got fuel stored on site. And one of the things that happens in really bad weather is the plant with fuel on site, which would be a nuclear or a coal plant or a oil plant, and oil is, of course, not in the running. But the fuel on site means that it's not going to be easily interruptible. And what happens if fuel has to be delivered? Gas compressors go offline in very cold weather. Sometimes happened in Tennessee and also in Texas that time. And it's not trivial to run a grid with just-in-time delivery of fuel. You want some fuel stored on site.
Can they weatherproof the gas delivery, or is that just by definition the level of technology we have? If it gets too cold, it's going to stop.
They can weatherproof it a lot. I mean, gas is delivered in Minnesota for Pete's sake, and so it could be delivered in Texas. I think that they don't bother to do it because they're looking at, well, how often is going to be that cold. There's also, in my book, I talk about two grids. Okay, I talk about the physical grid, which is the things you can see out your window, lines and power lines and substations, and the policy grid, which is the rules about how the entities on the physical grid get paid, is really what the policy grid is. The reason I went into this little talk here is that some of the problems with gas are policy, not physical. For example, if you have gas delivered to your home, your gas delivery pers company will almost certainly have a very solid contract with the gas pipeline.
Mhm.
If you're a power plant, you will look for a cheaper contract, and the cheaper contract will be, quote, an interruptible contract. In
Mhm.
other words, if we have the gas, we'll send it to you, and if we don't, you'll have to use something else. So I think that's a policy decision. And in all honesty, if the uh, gas burning power plants all wanted uninterruptible contracts, they probably couldn't get it. There's not enough gas pipelines to get them all uninterruptible contracts. But it's still a matter of policy whether whether you have an interruptible or non-interruptible contract. It's not a matter of the pipeline exactly.
Well, and also in your book, you make FERC and the RTO seem like, well, this is a problem. We add a rule. This is a problem. We add a policy. This is a rule. We add a thing. And it's become so incredibly complex that it strikes me that they're going to have to hire so many lawyers and accountants that they'll be spending more on that. It strikes me on reading all your stuff that what they really need to do is start over with a clean sheet of paper instead of just piling thing on thing.
Oh, I agree. I consider that the way the RTOs and FERC run is a set of bandages on top of other bandages, and and so something comes up, they say, "Oh, we'll do a little fix on it." It won't be too hard, but it turns out to be incredibly difficult to figure out what the rules are. I mean, it really can be difficult even for the utility lawyers to try and figure out what the rules are. So yes, I think they should start it over again. And if they start it over again, they should set it up in a way that encourages reliability.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, they don't really encourage reliability. The auctions run every 5 minutes, and you decide whether you're going to be in the auction in the next 5 minutes. That is, if you're a power plant.
Right. All right. So with all that, what do you think they will change on the grid over the next 5 years?
I think they will be building more baseload type power plants, nuclear and so forth. But I also think they're going to kind of go back to the way it used to be, where if you built a power plant, you got a guaranteed rate of return. So you were eager to build that power plant because you'd be paid enough. Now with 5 minute auctions and people and groups bidding in at zero and so forth, you're building a power plant, you don't know how much you're going to be paid. So I think it's going to be moving back toward the old way, but it won't be moving back all at once. Nobody's going to say, no, we want some monopolies here. What they're going to do is they're going to be giving reliability must run contracts to more and more power plants. So for example, if let's say there's a power plant and it can't clear the auctions, but the grid operator looks at that plant and says, "Oh my, you are necessary for this grid to be reliable." And the power plant says, "Yeah, but I'm not making any money. Bye bye." And then the grid operator says, "No, no, we can fix that. We'll give you a reliability must run contract. You get whatever money you can from the auction, and we'll make up so that you have enough money to keep in business. That is, we'll give you a promise of the rest of the money that you need." And that's not very far from the old way of doing things. And I think that it's going to be more and more reliability must run contracts. So people will say, yeah, we still have our RTOs. They're just the way they used to be, except that more and more plants will be on a price plus fixed fee kind of contract.
Well, in that case, isn't it pretty much the same as just telling them, we will promise to just pay you this amount for the year if you give us that base load power, 98% of the time.
Well, yes, it is. It's exactly like I say. It's moving back to that that model,
Uh,
but it's not moving back uh, as a whole thing. You understand that there's a whole structure of lawyers and utility forecasters and all kinds of things that support this 5 minute auction stuff.
mhm.
And so you're not going to be able very easily to say, hey, we're dumping that. We're going back to the old way with vertically integrated utilities that had reliability as their requirement, and they were also paid enough to provide that reliability. That's how it used to be, and that's what we're going back to. I don't think you're going to be able to say that. There's a whole ecosystem of people who are expecting that not to happen,
Right.
and I would say that what's going to happen is, as I say, oh, we still have that ecosystem of people who, but meanwhile, a lot of plants are running on the old method. It's just called reliability must run now.
Mhm.
In, in, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Last question for you, and I actually just did this. Does it make sense for people in most places, depending on the climate and the way their house faces, to put solar plus batteries in their house so that when they do get the local blackouts, they still have electricity in their own home?
For many people, it would be reasonable to do that. I'm going to say that if you're looking at avoiding blackouts, it'd
Mhm.
be a lot cheaper to get, I believe it would be cheaper to get a, uh, a home generator. That is, you fill it with propane and it runs, sort of thing. Uh, but on the other hand, people don't want to do that because that adds to carbon pollution, and and so you have the solar plus batteries. Now, the thing about solar plus batteries is solar is paid, home solar is usually paid at the price of retail electricity. And so the grid operator, when they're saying, well, we're rolling back your bill,
Mhm.
that's your retail bill. And so home solar tends to be very expensive for the grid operator because they say, okay, I'm getting so many kilowatt hours of solar here, but I could get the same amount of kilowatt hours from my local gas plant for much cheaper.
Mhm.
It, it, it's a complicated thing because of, as you said, how complicated they've made the policy part. But yes, I would say I think that solar and a battery would be good. I would say that they'd be good in a area that's very sunny. And
Mhm.
I would also say that if you happen to live in the northwest or the northeast, where the clouds roll in and then they don't roll out for a month or so, you would probably be better off with a generator.
Yeah, I lived in Seattle for 3.5 years, and you don't see the sun for half the year.
Yeah, that's right. The clouds rolled in and it's bye bye sun. I mean, I remember living in Ithaca, New York, and having a chat with some people over coffee, and what we were talking about is what day we had last seen the sun. Which day, I saw that on February 3rd. Really?
Mhm.
I saw it on February 7th, I think. You couldn't have.
All right, well, this is the end. Is there anything else that you would like to say to my plethora of a very small number of viewers?
Oh, I'm always happy for people to buy my book or to read my Substack, which is free and which you can comment on. And so we can end up having a dialogue.
Yeah, and I would second that thing. That book it's very well written and it flows very well and it imparts an immense amount of knowledge. So highly recommended.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to your program.
Oh, sure.